Welcome, everyone, to this short podcast talk on healthcare's journey to developing a smart and cybersecure digital infrastructure, which provides the foundations to adopt and integrate AI across the NHS. I'm Mark Blanchard, I'm the Public Sector Director from GovNews, and I'm delighted to be joined today by my guest, Chris Colledge, multi-cloud expert for Bytes Software Services. Chris, great to have you with us.
Thank you very much for having me, Mark.
Intro into Chris. He's a pre-sales leader at Bytes with extensive knowledge and experience in the field of enterprise technology. He is highly skilled in helping his customers modernize their IT infrastructure by migrating to the cloud. Chris and his team understand the challenges that the NHS face when transitioning to the cloud and are able to work collaboratively with their NHS customer base to provide and develop tailored solutions that meet their specific needs and challenges. And it's with this rapid pace of technological change within healthcare that modernizing ICT infrastructure is essential for them to improve not just performance, but increase efficiency. And cloud computing, as we've talked about in this white paper, often offers significant benefits, including that increase of agility, scalability, and cost savings. And by working with Bytes and leveraging Chris's expertise and that of his team, his and Bytes NHS customers regularly continue to successfully navigate that complex of cloud migration and management, and are able to uh, take full advantage of the benefits that cloud computing has to offer. So, yeah, excited about today's talk. So, Chris, let's get started. Tell our listeners about Bytes, what its partnership with Microsoft is all about, and where does the Azure offering offer benefits to the NHS?
Yeah, absolutely, Mark. I wish everyone always said such nice things about me at the top of a call. So thanks for that. As we know, Microsoft is sort of the provider for healthcare when it comes to cloud, right? And the offerings in Azure are renowned in the healthcare space, specifically around the NHS. Bytes itself is the UK's largest partner for Microsoft, Microsoft Azure. So what that means is we've got quite a lot of knowledge about the inner workings of Microsoft. Traditionally, we've been known as like an LSP, kind of focused around licensing and things like that. But recently, in the last 5 years at least, we've been focusing on how customers should be getting technical outcomes from their cloud. So we want to be as good at technical outcomes as we're known for as being at licensing. What that means is it's not just about saving money when it comes to cloud, it's about looking at where the good money is spent and looking at what technical projects we can do alongside our customers that are going to increase efficiency, going to save them time, are going to be good technical projects for them. So as you quite rightly said, me and my team work with customers day in day out. That could be healthcare organizations, that could be trusts, that could be anyone that sort of serves the healthcare space, and we look for areas of the cloud that maybe they haven't thought about yet, maybe they have been thinking about, and we look at catalyzing action around that. So we look at getting projects off the ground and what kind of support they need to make those happen.
Hmm. So, how does Azure specifically contribute to the NHS's cloud infrastructure and its digital transformation plans?
Also, the cloud infrastructure itself, I think if we had have spoken maybe 5 years ago, we would have been sat here saying, well, look, if you move everything to cloud, you're no longer going to have to manage a data center anymore. You're no longer going to have to, hire people to run the data center. I think realistically, there's still a space for the data center, and
Mm.
it's not like Azure is just going to completely replace a data center. Um, People are now turning to cloud as a way to get their most valuable IT resources, delivering the kind of innovation that's made available to them through the cloud, right? If we think about the democratization of services, right, there's a lot of platform services that people can just go and use in the cloud, but the people that are the right people to be going and using them are traditionally tied up into a data center. So as we move towards that technical development area and with people wanting to try things fast, it's difficult to do that in that traditional data center. What you kind of want to see is, getting the resources that understand the data, understand the architecture, and understand kind of what the healthcare organization needs to be trying out new things. And they can't do that whilst operating a data center. So what Microsoft Azure does is it gives them access to tools on demand really quickly, but it also frees up the boring day-to-day kind of, let's say you're a database administrator and you spend your whole days patching and managing SQL. Imagine if you moved all of that to Azure. Now you've got a database administrator. Now tie that into like a data strategy that you might have as a healthcare organization. Who's the best person to be doing that? Probably a database administrator. But if they're managing databases, then they can't do both at the same time. So Azure is really allowing people to start doing that by taking management of the boring stuff and giving them on-demand access to the exciting stuff.
Mm. Okay, can you shed some light on any of the new exciting or specific AI applications or indeed solutions that are enabling or that are enabled via Azure that are able to uh, 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 benefit in healthcare initiatives across the NHS?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, look, it's 2023. You can't get through a call this year without mentioning AI.
AI.
If a very quick Google search for AI in healthcare will have people returning to you these fantastic high tech AI use cases where robots are going to be doing our brain surgery, and you can scan a billion images of a tumor, and it's going to say, well, look, this one's a tumor, that one's not a tumor, and it's going to be able to do that with great precision. But that for me is kind of not the thing that I want to focus on. One thing that's not getting enough press is kind of small, continual operational savings that tie into AI. So, let's say consultants being able to free up more time to spend with patients. Let's say, you're, I mean, the problem is undoubtedly practitioners spend a lot of their time doing boring stuff, right?
Like the
Typing
mundane
up,
stuff.
yeah, typing up notes, sort of doing reviews of consultations that they might have, scheduling, that kind of stuff. And these are all things that take them away from doing what they got into the NHS for, right? No doctor that I've ever spoken to said, I really love going into the NHS. I love how many emails I get to respond to every day, or I love how many meeting reviews I get to type up. So what that's leading to is an all-time low in job satisfaction, right? 25% of NHS staff said they'll look for a new job in the next 12 months. The overwhelming majority of them say they don't have the resources they need to meet demands on time, and that leads to burned out frontline workers in essence, because they are doing things that is not the reason why they got into healthcare. So if you tie that into the fact that it's becoming harder to hire and retain the staff, this sort of leads to a never-ending spiral, right? The people that do remain in the NHS are burnt out. You can't hire more people to support them, and I don't even think that just hiring more practitioners is the solution. I think the solution is to make existing ones more efficient by giving them something that takes the sort of long, boring, time-consuming, mundane stuff out of their day jobs. Um, so if we look at things that Microsoft have released, Copilot, that kind of stuff that helps,
Yeah.
your day-to-day efficiency increase. If you look at some of the healthcare specific AI models that are coming out that help, write and type up notes really fast and really quickly. If I'm a consultant, I'm thinking, right, okay, so there is light at the end of that. I'm not going to be here like hitting the grindstone forever. I'm going to be more efficient. Hopefully that will lead to a higher job satisfaction, and it will lead to a higher retainment rate within the NHS. And then hopefully we can get that public satisfaction of the NHS up from the 30% that it was in 2020 back to about the 70% mark that it was in 2010.
Mm. So, how does a cloud adoption strategy align with, say, the NHS's long-term vision for healthcare advancement?
Well, so all of the use cases I've just spoken about, they all come down to culture, right? People need to be technically minded in the way that they approach the problems. Again, it's not just about hiring more people to achieve, to solve one problem. So, people who have moved to the cloud or have tried to move to infrastructure as a service in the cloud and away from the data center without doing any sort of cultural realignment, they tend to struggle in the cloud, right? So
Mm.
um, the cloud adoption framework really says we'll get the people ready for the cloud by getting them to start thinking about technical solutions to the problem. What I mean by that is, again, making sure that people understand the range of services that are available to them in the cloud, but also making sure that they understand things like security risks and making sure that they understand things like data tiering to make sure they don't overspend on large data sets, or make sure they understand the different deployment mechanisms, IaaS, PaaS, function as a service, all of these different kind of things, which they're all available to you all at once in the cloud. And people often make the mistakes of choosing the wrong one. The cloud adoption framework really helps you sort of figure out which one's right for you.
Okay. So, how does Azure then facilitate that whole data interoperability and accessibility within an NHS digital ecosystem, especially concerning those AI driven healthcare solutions?
Yeah, absolutely. So I read a stat earlier. It was that the NHS produces about 50 petabytes of siloed data annually, and 97% of it goes unused. So you think 50 petabytes, there's got to be a lot of value in that data. You don't really know whether a lot of it is just junk data. You're never going to see value from it. You don't know where the crown jewels of the data are. But the fact that 97% of the data goes unused is probably because they all live in different data silos,
Yeah.
right? So they're all living in a different system, and only one person from each system understands the system enough to be able to give you any sort of insights from the data, and they might not be data scientists. So obviously Microsoft Azure, they're releasing services week on week around data, but whenever they do release a data service, they think, how can this support the Microsoft Cloud for Healthcare message? So
Mm.
we'll take a tool set like Microsoft Fabric, which was released this year, went general availability a couple of months ago. That's a tool that's designed to unify data for a lot of organizations in general. And there's a lot of noise about how that helps, public and private sector, but they've got some really strong messaging for healthcare. The three main features for healthcare are the fact that they've specifically said you can combine data sets like EHRs, electronic health records, picture archiving, communication systems, lab systems, all of those different data silos that a healthcare organization would have to join together. They've said, well, Fabric can do that. That allows you to then build what they call a standard data model across your organization or your trust, or however you're structured. So you can say, this is the way that we structure our data in the organization, and these are the kind of reports that we're pulling from that data. And that then works in every organization that you deploy something like Fabric to. But lastly, they've got this de-identification process within Microsoft Fabric that allows you to remove, it sort of spots automatically sensitive healthcare data, and it removes that sensitive healthcare data automatically while still retaining the clinical value of the data. So, if you want to look at one way of resolving the fact that 97% of the data is wasted, having a common data model that anonymizes the data as you go, so you can share it across the business to see what kind of value they've got from it, I think that's massively revolutionary for the NHS.
Yeah. Okay. How do you foresee Azure's role evolving within the NHS, within its infrastructure in the coming years, especially to be able to enhance AI driven patient care or AI driven decisions?
I think one thing that I'm really excited about is the sort of looking at how clinicians are using it directly. Um, so, a bit of context, Microsoft are predicting that over 60 AI services are going to be ready for large scale deployments in England's healthcare sector within a year. And when you think about it, prior to 2023, if you're a healthcare organization and you say, hey, look, we want to have an AI strategy or we want to have a machine learning strategy, you'd have to have some pretty deep pockets or some pretty clever people to be
Yeah.
able to be able to do
Neither
it.
of which are in high demand. Yeah.
Yeah, so you're sat there thinking, oh, flipping heck, how much is this going to cost me? It's going to be an absolute fortune for us to go and outsource this, and someone will develop an MVP, which isn't really what we wanted because we weren't involved in designing it. Well,
Yeah.
look, obviously now AI has been democratized a little bit. If we look at kind of again out the box AI assistants like co-pilots, we're seeing it making headway in summarizing large documents. Can you tell me the key information about this patient based on all of their medical records? Or can you generate consultation notes? Can you summarize remote consultations immediately after the remote consultation for me? and generally just streamlining an individual's day-to-day tasks with an
Mm.
AI assistant. But anything that's not sort of out of the box resolved by Copilot, you can look at things like the Azure OpenAI service. So, to have access to machine learning, again, you traditionally have to outsource a lot of that, but the Azure OpenAI service has democratized that access to some of the most powerful machine learning models that we've ever seen. And so we're seeing IT teams within organizations saying, look, let's try and build something ourselves. Let's try and go at it. What's the problem? And let's try and figure out if there's a technical solution to this problem and then roll it out to the wider area. So if you look at, I know, Mark, you've spoken about the case study of Justin Green and Mike Reed at Northumbria Healthcare NHS Foundation, where they looked at analyzing risk, right? They looked at analyzing risk within surgeries to be able to accurately tell a patient what their risk of any complications in a surgery is. They saw that as a challenge. They said, look, we don't like being vague when we go back to customers, and we know that there's a model that we can train to help us figure this out. And they just went at it, right?
Yeah.
There's two clinicians going at it and figuring it out rather than sort of deferring it to a different party. And I honestly think I can see that happening more and more and more as these 60 out of the box services become more available to the practitioners themselves.
Yeah. Okay. How about as a final question, tell me about what's exciting you about the future prospects of Azure-powered AI applications in the NHS, and how do you see it shaping the future of healthcare delivery?
Yeah, I mean, what's really exciting me is the fact that the NHS have said there's investment for it, right? We all
Mm.
know someone that's stuck on a waiting list. I'm stuck on a waiting list at the moment. So when I see things like NHS investing, X amount in AI-powered solutions to look at revolutionizing healthcare, that excites me because as an IT professional, I sit here and you see the problems in the NHS and you see the problems in healthcare in general, and you go, I know there's technical solutions to this, but the challenge has always been, people are too busy chopping wood to sharpen the axe. People are too busy to refocus and reinvest, and that's understandable because they're focusing on delivering, fundamental healthcare services to people.
Mm.
But when you see headlines like NHS are investing, X billion in focusing on AI solutions for better healthcare, that makes me think actually maybe that will be in the form of smarter consultations. Maybe that will make more consultants available. Maybe that will improve the speed that it takes to get a diagnosis. Maybe that will just do some of those things that's going to ease the bottleneck to bring those waiting times down. And I think that is genuinely what people want, right? They want
Yeah,
accurate diagnostics and they don't want to be sat on a waiting list. And I think if you deliver those two things, the public perception of the NHS is going to start going back up again.
absolutely. Chris Colledge, multi-cloud expert for Bytes Software Services. Thank you very much for joining me today. I'm sure our listeners have found the information you've shared very insightful. And I'm Matt Blanchard of GovNews, and thank you to our listeners for joining us today on today's podcast talk on healthcare's journey to developing a smart and cybersecure digital infrastructure, one which is providing the foundations to adopt and integrate AI across the NHS. Chris, thanks again for your time.
Thank you very much, Mark.